Hi, welcome to AI Uncovered. I'm your host, Tim Martin, and also the leader of product at EasyOp, a company creating AI software. In this podcast, I'm going to search to learn everything about AI, the market, the tech, and some real-world applications. I'll be interviewing some experts and folks executing on AI and extracting critical insights about this technology for our listeners. So let's get started on a path of deeper learning about AI. My guest today is Oeystein Kjoersvik. From here on in, I'll refer to him as Stein, his nickname. He began his journey as a product owner in analytics at Merck IT, where he focused on building analytics tools. He also served as a machine learning subject matter expert for TransCelerate's Intelligent Automation Group, where he worked on advancing AI applications in pharmacovigilance and addressing the challenges of working with AI in regulated environments. Stein has also been actively involved in the IMPALA Consortium, Intercompany Quality Analytics Initiative, a cross-industry collaboration similar to TransCelerate, focused on identifying high-value GenAI projects that could benefit the entire pharmaceutical ecosystem. Now in his current role in quality assurance at Merck, he leads the Generative AI program, working with both the development of AI tools and establishing a quality-first approach to AI. A major focus of his work is ensuring that AI can be safely and effectively used within GxP environments, aligning innovation with compliance and regulatory requirements. Stein, you have a really interesting background when it comes to AI, quality. You've done a lot of work with TransCelerate and Impala, so I want to dig into all of this. But let's just simply start with, tell us about your journey. You're a product owner in analytics. You're doing quality assurance at Merck today. What sparked your interest in AI and good general practices and just general quality?
I guess the AI part started with me doing a master's in bioinformatics, and it allowed me to focus on AI in a time where AI didn't really exist as, a topic in school. So I was able to kind of get a fast track there. And then when I joined Merck, they had this analytics group that was being set up, and it was trying to highlight the use of how to get the most out of your data with data lakes. So it's kind of in the beginning of that where you're combining data across different databases and also, your retire system, you can add different levels to that. And we started throwing data science on top of that again. So we're saying, like, okay, well, how can we use this data to make it more valuable to the company? And during that time, I got contacted out, like, do you want to represent Merck for TransCelerate? Because they had a project that needed a machine learning SME working on intelligent automation within PV. I was like, sure, let's do that. That's interesting. So I started that journey, and it took me down this rabbit hole of trying to understand how to do validation for AI in the pharma industry. And uh, so this was pre-COVID. All this started back in 2018, 2019, somewhere. And we were trying to go through this. And we met with EMA, we met with FDA, MHRA, and we're asking them, it's like, hey, so what is our guidelines? If we do any type of data science tool, what do we need to put in? And they're saying, like, we don't have strict guidelines. You need to kind of think for yourself, make sure you don't do anything too bad. And they were saying, like, something is coming. And it was always coming. Like they were working on it. It's always going to be there. And I was like, great. So we started working on this paper ourselves. We was talking about how would we want to validate AI tools. And again, this is prior to Gen AI becoming a thing. And so, and that threw that threw us all for a loop in the end, because now it changed everything. Because when you start with normal AI tools, you have kind of this assumption that your end user is trained on the tool. The tool is some kind of a static that you're working with. So you train a model. That model has gone through testing. You have all this stuff, and you say, okay, we can control for the input, we can control for the output, and we can control for the user. And now we have Gen AI kind of thrown in there, and we're not really controlling for any of these pieces because it's too complex to control for the model. It's too complex to control for the input because they have their own prompts. And now, and it's really hard to say, okay, we can't control for the output because there's a random generator part of the entire process. And so with that, I kind of looked at this, I found this really interesting. And I kind of jumped over to the quality side of my company where I became half auditor and half lead for a Gen AI team. This kind of developed over time after I joined quality, but that's kind of where I am right now. So I'm on one side trying to understand how to audit technology and find ways to do it. And I'm focusing AI within the company or even talking to vendors. But I'm also trying to build our own tools and working with a team, trying to produce something that is meeting a standard that is expected of a big company that has patients that we need to take care of. Sorry, that was a long answer to a simple
No, it's a
question.
great, I mean, I love this. The cross section of dealing with AI models and generative AI has made things a little bit more complex, randomness and the output, et cetera, as you said. So this is a specifically difficult job, right? To apply quality techniques to generative AI and an interesting cross section for even the work that I'm doing. I'd like to step back for a moment here and talk about your time at TransCelerate. I'm really interested in understanding what you did there, what you think about the TransCelerate mission, and how you think it can impact big pharma in a positive way.
So, so for anyone who don't know about TransCelerate, it's kind of where a bunch of companies in pharma, I think we're 22 last I checked, maybe more now, of the biggest pharma companies get together. We all have representatives, and we get together to solve a common problem, which couple of reasons why this is great. One, you get people who are really passionate about a topic. You don't get picked because this is something you do on top of your normal workload. So so you kind of get passionate people, and you get people with different problems, different perspective. So it kind of removes you from your internal bubble, and you get to see the landscape. Um, so in my time, I got to talk to. I don't know. I think we had a group of 15, 16 with some rotating people that all were dealing with different levels of this. And we're all at different hierarchy levels. We had different specializations. So I was the technical, but we had people on the business side. And we're all trying to solve this common problem. And we met weekly or often and trying to come up with how do we solve this? And I think the main thing Transolar does for me is allowing like as a unity or as a unit, we're able to look at this as a problem for the industry instead of just me or my team or my organization or even my company. So we were able to meet with the FDA, we're able to meet with the EMA or MHRA, and we're able to kind of push this bigger discussion for something that we're challenged with. And I think that's something TransCelerate did really well. Did I miss anything in your question I didn't highlight?
Oh, just if you can talk a little bit about where you see the value for big pharma, not just it's good for big pharma to get together and talk about problems, but what kind of problems do you really see that you were able to solve while you were there?
So I think let's take my specific one, which is validating AI within the industry. That is a really big problem, and we're all going to be at the mercy of the industry or the regulatory industry when they come to actually putting in rules for us. So that's a common problem for all us, like it's because there's a lot of uncertainty. But this allows us to have this discussion as a unity, and I think um, all of us talking about what our problems are as a unit was very helpful instead of every single company saying, okay, my company had this issue, my company had this issue. We're kind of able to come to a common understanding of where are our challenges. And of course, this is me speaking from my personal opinion. I'm sure other people might have a very different opinion on this. Um, but I think from where I think this is also a very cheap way for a company to solve a bigger problem because they only have to nominate me and other companies can nominate someone else and we work together instead of having I couldn't imagine trying to solve this within a group in the short amount of time we did. I think it was very sped up compared to what a lot of companies need to do because we didn't need to worry about the hierarchies, we didn't need to worry about a lot of the policies. You were able to cut through some of the red tape in that sense.
Okay, and you also mentioned that you're involved in Impala. Can you give us some background on Impala and what you're up to there?
Yeah, so Impala is similar to TransCelerate, where we're working with multiple companies trying to solve a common problem. I would say where TransCelerate is focused on, at least in my experience, focused on bigger problems that are a little bit more, theoretical. Impala for me has been very much trying to solve specific solutions where we're trying to push out specific tools or sharing more specific problem solving issues. And so right now we're trying to uh, push out a new tool over time. And I think it's much more directed, I guess, and more technical, which I think has its own value. And again, we're sharing a common problem within the industry.
And I think you recently gave a paper or discussed a paper at DIA in San Diego, and this was something you were working on in the Impala group. Can you give us a little bit of light on what you've been working on?
Yeah, so that was a specific tool that I kind of mentioned now. And the idea for that tool is to find a way to not fully automate, but at least make it easier to work around regulatory guidelines. So the regulatory guidelines in the industry is kind of a moving target because they keep changing. And there's a lot of work trying to figure out how do we make sure we meet regulatory guidelines. And as they're changing, how do we make sure we monitor and make sure we're kind of not missing anything? So the tool that we've been working on, and I think Biogen has been the driver for this tool actually. And it's kind of the idea of have a Gen AI um, kind of tool sitting there analyzing all the inputs of changes coming from regulatory guidelines, matching it up with internal documents that you have, like an SOP, and seeing where are our gaps, what are the differences between what the guidelines say and what we have internally, and then maybe even highlighting in that document where those mistakes are or omissions are, so you can much easier find it and make sure you're compliant. And so in that way, you can not only internally feel safe that you're kind of not missing anything and you can speed up the process, but you also can tell the regulators, hey, we're really trying. We have tools trying to make sure we're not missing anything. Um, and again, it's just augmenting the solution. It's not a fully end-to-end automation.
Well, this is where it gets interesting for me, right? Because you're using, I think, generative AI techniques. Everybody knows they're probabilistic. So how do you manage? You're a quality guy, right? So how do you manage a generative AI tool and make sure that it's valuable, trusted with the end users?
So, well, this is the forever question, right? Um, so for me, it comes down to because we're talking about where we need to control for the variables. So I always think about it starting off teaching people how to use the tools, why they use the tools, how they can use the tools, and how they should not use the tools. So if users understand the limitations, they understand how to optimize it, they will be better users, they'll be more confident users, and they'll be more likely to be able to adopt it in the future. So for me, I think that's the starting point. Just to have a quality approach is having the mindset of making sure people are adequately trained on the tools you want to give them. Um, the second part is I don't really believe we're at the space of end-to-end. Like you want to have a human in the loop. I don't think end-to-end automation is where we are just yet. So, because all the processes and everything we have built out kind of has the assumption of you need to have a check mark at the end saying like someone reviewed this, someone said this was good enough. And so I think most of the tools right now should and are built in a way where you have someone at the end saying, yeah, this is done to the standard that's expected, even if a human did it. Um, but I'm always worried that with these tools, people will kind of offload some responsibility from themselves and onto the tool, saying like, "Hey, it's been working 99% of the time. Um, I missed it, so what?" Uh, we need to find ways around that. So we're trying to put in safeguards to kind of avoid people kind of offloading it because people can get surprised by when it gets wrong or even how it gets wrong.
Point. I think there's been studies that suggest that over time people just start believing that these models are accurate, right? And they just go with it. But I like your approach. It's a similar approach to what we do at EasyUp, which is, there has to be human in the loop. We're trying to, build tools that help human beings. Pilot is just a general term that everybody uses, but the responsibility still lies with, in our case, the medical writer, in your case, maybe a quality person, right? You have to check the box. And I don't know what you guys are doing, but for me, user experience, user interfaces can be pretty valuable here if you do it the
Hmm.
right way, and there's other techniques. But are you looking at it in a similar fashion?
Yeah, so it's one of those things. I think ease of use is the biggest driver to getting people to actually interact. Um, and I think this is one of the things um, like when we're building a tool, it's not all, it's like you can give them a blank text box and say, hey, learn to, like you just prompt in, you can do anything you want. It's so open. But in the reality, if you don't give them a starting prompt or something, a lot of people get stuck. You kind of need to give them some hints on how to do it or limit them a little bit. A lot of times by giving people too much opportunity, it actually makes it so it's harder for them to do it. So, so trying to find that balance.
What you're basically saying is everybody's not a great prompt engineer yet, right? And if you have unlimited prompts, you can get unlimited types of output.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised what you can do with it. So it's yeah, trying to limit that a little bit can also be smart. Or even have safeguards to check what's been done in the past. So there's like basically transparency on the entire way around. I think it's helpful. So like when you do something, you can understand why it was done and how it was done. And so if you use a tool, it should be transparent that that tool was used. Um, And I think that's was a big factor because if because on my audit side of things, I'm trying to figure out how do I actually audit an AI tool. That's the next challenge, right? So that's another thing to look at. So we need to document everything too.
So this is obviously one of the big challenges as a quality person. So let's move away from this specific tool discussion in Impala and talk more generally about your quality roles and what you have to do with generative AI. So since generative AI came out, and you're so involved in making sure that there's lots of controls and your company's doing the right things. How do you approach this now? What's your thought process generally about quality and generative AI? And is there a framework that you use?
Uh, I'm I'm trying to work with people building out the frameworks, right? So like putting in the proper policies, making sure like the proper mindset is put into people. So I do a lot of trainings. So we have now a monthly session where people are invited to listen to us talk. We have open office hours. We have a forum where we're answering questions. Just make sure people understand. So, because I think the starting point of anything quality is to make sure people are understanding what they're doing and the impact of why they're doing it. And it's, I think for me, that's the starting point. Secondly, trying to figure out what type of information needs to be documented around this. Like, if you're building out a tool, we need to make sure all the valid information are gathered on the models being used. You need to understand what data it's being used on, um, and do that entire like make sure it's transparent, which is kind of what I was saying. So much unknown in the new processes. And generally I think we're in a position where I kind of don't want to automate people out because I don't think we're there at all with the technology. What I want to do is empower people to make them faster and more efficient at what they're doing and hopefully do a better job with it. Because like if you look, so because you mentioned like the Copilot tools, right? I really think these tools are great in the sense that it allows you to automate out a lot of the boring, non-important parts of your life, and it gets you to focus on the things you're good at. And it removes some fatigue. And allows you to kind of just focus on what matters. So if you have people who have year experience, and then you say, okay, you no longer need to take meeting notes. It's done for you. You no longer need to, I don't know, build a PowerPoint from scratch. I think Copilot is great for that. Don't trust them to build my full PowerPoint, but I think it's great to give me a starting point. Like if you build a good prompt, they can give you a good baseline. But it speeds me up. I hate taking meeting notes. I think it's the worst thing ever. I don't get to focus on the discussion. Now it's done for me, so I can focus on what I want to focus on. And I think these kind of things are really where the value comes in. But it also, from a quality perspective, means the risk is lower because I'm not trying to take these big steps to automate out big processes from end to end. Um, the other thing, as I see it, is we're in a space where a lot of processes we have are kind of tied to an old way of working, and where we have these amazing tools, but our technology is beyond it. And we're trying to kind of shoehorn these tools into an old process where it may not make sense. So that's the next step that I find quite interesting. And I'm at the moment not really in the position of changing it. So maybe slowly.
I find that insightful though, because I have seen scenarios where, the discussion is let's bend AI to meet our old processes or to be
Mm.
integrated in something that exists. And I always cringe a little bit there because I think you need to think in new ways now with generative AI, right? And you need to revisit your processes. And because doing that along with evaluating these generative AI models and what they can do can get you, I think, light years ahead of kind of going back and just using the old processes that you had, right? So, do you feel the same way?
Oh, absolutely. I think you know, it's hard to say like, oh, you should throw out all the old processes and just start from scratch because we still have a regulatory agency that's looking at the old processes and that's what it's measured against. So it's not so easy, and we're kind of a hostage to that on top of it. So I'm not trying to say that we can throw it all out or just start it again because I don't know if that's possible. On the other hand, I think it would be very valuable, and I think this is where like places like TransCelerate is good because they get to have this discussion, saying they can talk to the agencies and say, hey, this process that you're checking us against is no longer as valuable as you think it is, or maybe and here is our counter proposal. So I think those are the kind of discussions I think would be helpful. But also, any regulatory environment is going to be slow. So, and I'm happy I'm not the one having to make those decisions.
Sure, sure. So a question around, so you have this broad experience with TransCelerate and Impala, you're doing a lot of quality work. So as a result of all your learnings over the last few years, like what advice would you give somebody in your shoes at another pharma company with respect to quality and generative AI? Like what would you say, what are the things that you would offer initially to really help them along?
Well, I guess I say what I'm trying to do, which is I'm trying to be proactive. I think we're in a space now that I think in some ways the AI field in farm is a bit of the Wild West. The regulations aren't there yet, but I'm sure they're coming because they have to come. And right now you can do a lot without really a safety net. And so I'm trying to be proactive. I think I'm trying to think ahead. But by the time these changes come, I'm hoping it's going to be an easy transition because we're already thinking that way. We have a mindset around what we're doing that we will meet the requirements and we will make sure we're not taking unnecessary risk. Because you can kind of, like I used to be in IT. I'm familiar with the misery of having to do documentation. I understand the misery of needing to deal with all of these things. Um, but now that I'm in quality and I'm kind of sitting on the other side, I'm understanding why. And so it's like I get a completely different appreciation for it now that I'm sitting on the other end. And and so I think a little bit pain now will benefit you later. And in terms of what you should do, I think looking into what TransCelerate is doing, for example, is a great starting point. Also, I think going to conferences, I think talking to other people, get out of your bubble, talk to other people doing the same thing. So you're not just stuck talking to the same people in your company to solve like their problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, as you take a look at generative AI with a quality lens, are there anything emerging trends or anything in generative AI that you're particularly excited about?
I guess I kind of touched on it. Um, and I guess within my field, I feel like it's quite controversial because people, in some ways, hate Copilot, but I actually really like it. But I don't think it's the greatest generative AI tool out there because I think there's definitely others that are better. But what they do so well is it integrates so well into these everyday tools we have. And for a lot of the users we have, that I'm trying to get across to, it's great because it becomes a simple integration for them, and that allows them to learn quickly. And so for me, I think probably Copilot is one of the things I'm excited about. But even though I don't necessarily think it's by itself the best tool, um, but but as with most things, it takes time for it to get better. So anything that integrates, I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah, so longer term, you're looking at more deeper
Yeah.
integrations and processes and generative AI. So let me ask a broader question. How do you think this all evolves over the next 5 or 10 years? What do you see happening in generative AI and quality and pharma?
Well, so I describe it as the Wild West right now. I think that kind of ends. I think we're going to get more regulations, and I think we're going to be put in a position of having to build up more frameworks to showcase that we're doing the right thing. And it gives opportunity to show that these steps we're taking are done in order to protect the company, protect the patients, protect, the integrity of our everything we're doing. And so I think that will be mandatory. And I think in some ways it will slow us down, but I think it will make us better. Um, and I'm sure we're going to have frustrated developers that's going to remember the good old times when they didn't need to worry about this stuff. But it's I think that's the way to go. Um, from the technology perspective, you know nobody I didn't see this coming when I started working on my work with TransCelerate. This kind of came out of the blue, and we have to adapt. So it's kind of an interesting one because people are showing their ability to use this tool in new ways all the time. I'm always excited to see how people are able to manipulate the prompts to get different outputs. And so I'm quite excited to see where that takes in the next 10 years with also more computational power and everything to build bigger models. And we just saw DeepSeek come out. So
Hot topic
where
right
that yeah, I know. I don't know enough about that to dig into it at all, but just as on the surface, it seems very interesting, and it could definitely be a disruptor in what we're doing. So we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels like people worry about AI slowing down, but I think there's so much out there right now in generative AI and what companies can do that there's years of work to do, even if the models don't get significantly better in a short period of time, right? And they are, we know they are. So also looking forward to that. So in general, if people want to dive deeper into the topics that we discussed, what resources do you recommend?
if you really want to go to the source of a lot of this stuff, I do think peer-reviewed like publications are the best, but they're also the most difficult and boring. So if you want to kind of find easier ways, I think. I like looking at what's presented at different conferences. I like looking at work being done by different companies that are publicly available. I think places like TransCelerate do a good job. Um, Actually, I've been listening to this podcast. I enjoy it. I think it's a good way to get different perspectives. And so I think anything that allows you to get a different viewpoint is great. And so much information out there. That's why like the publications are the greatest because it has the peer-reviewed ones because it has a certain amount of scrutiny. So find the trusted sources 'cause there's so much information out there.
Yeah, no, that's also good advice. So we've gotten to the point here in the podcast where I like to ask the AI Uncovered Fast Four, just to learn a little bit about you and your relationship with AI. So let's just get started with, do you have a favorite book about AI, something you recommend to others?
Oh, I read an interesting one. I thought Life 3.0. It's a book about kind of a futuristic society with AI, where I think it was published in 2018. So it's a little bit different than what it is now, but it was quite interesting, and it was talking about kind of negative and positives of an AI future. I thought that was pretty cool. It's a little bit of a like an eye opener in certain things. So I don't know. It's a nice hypothetical book.
Yeah, that's good. That hasn't come up before, so I'll take a look at that. What about a movie? Any specific movie that you like about AI?
What was that? War Games. Is that the name? Yeah,
I
that's
think you're
the
right. It's
'80s
an
movie.
old movie.
Yeah, yeah. I really like that one. I thought that was always fun. Uh, I like you have the Terminator, you have Matrix, all these are great. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stick on word games because I think it's just simplistic and fun.
Yeah, I remember that. A couple kids saved the world, as I recall, something like that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, good outcome.
nuclear fallout.
Yeah. And what about AI applications? What do you find to be the most useful AI applications for yourself in what you do?
I guess I kind of just said it. I think for the broadly available applications, I think Copilot because it helps me help the people I'm trying to help. It makes the technology easy for them. But so on my own end, I kind of jump around. I try to test the different models. I do like the different models of ChatGPT. I need to jump in and try the DeepSeek. I haven't gotten there yet. But I think from like a just a general included tool, I kind of like Copilot for the average person.
What do you like when you try the different models? I like some better than others just because it's a little bit about the interface, it's a little bit about the output. Do you have a favorite model, one that you like to engage with more than others?
Think the last time I was happy with probably Claude, but they keep changing. Like it'd be good one day, and then all of a sudden it becomes bad the other. So they keep changing. It doesn't seem to be that stable, so it's hard to say.
Okay. And then last question. I always like to ask about thoughts about the singularity. When do you think AGI will become reality?
Um, Assuming we do the proper definition, the far out one, the one that's like when we're kind of the all-encompassing definition, then uh, 2055, June 2055. Oh, I'll give an entire month of leeway there.
Yeah, you can certainly have that. If you're that close, I'll give you that. Well, Stein, thanks so much. I enjoyed the podcast. Love the work that you're doing, and we'll look forward to more progress with generative AI and quality in your future.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It was great having Stein on the show today. It was very interesting to hear his take as a quality person on the use of generative AI in big pharma. It was also great to hear his experience across industry initiatives like TransCelerate and IMPALA. I hope the listeners enjoy this podcast, and I wish the best for Stein in his future endeavors.